Awesome. Thanks for everyone putting it in the chat. Again, for anyone who's just joined, we're going to get started in just 1 second. But if you want to drop your name in the chat and where you are coming from in terms of like what university campus you represent.
Great to see so many folks here. It's awesome.
Right, and if anyone is now joining us, we're asking people to just introduce themselves in the chat and to drop in the comment where you are coming from, what school you're representing. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Nice to meet everyone. It's great to see so many schools represented here in this Zoom call. My name is Kiana Flores. I am one of the interns for Rewild Your Campus, and we are going to first have a little introduction about Rewild Your Campus from Shaina and Mackenzie.
Awesome. Thank you, Kiana. Great to see so many folks here. Thank you for coming. Okay, I'm gonna just share my screen here. Okay. Why is it? Okay. Y'all can see this, right? Okay, cool. Yeah, so for those of you who are not familiar with our work, me and Shane are the co-directors of Rewild Your Campus. We're a national nonprofit with the goal of eliminating toxic pesticides from university campuses, and we work a lot with students. We work with sustainability directors, grounds managers, groundskeepers, et cetera, to reduce pesticide usage and also to increase biodiversity on college campuses. So like Kiana mentioned, so this is the first webinar of a summer series, and today we're going to be talking about what is organic land management and what it isn't. And just to, give you a, just a little bit of a sense of our work. I don't know why it's switching on me. Like I said, our goal is to turn, oh my gosh, it's just like, oh, it's like playing a video. Okay. Weird. I think I pressed the wrong thing. Whatever. We're on a mission to turn college campuses into climate resilient, biodiverse spaces. Today, we're talking about organic land care. A lot of that means looking at our lawns and how we can turn conventionally managed lawns into organic lawns. But we also do a fair amount of rewilding and looking at areas that lawns can be turned into native plants, or looking at underutilized spaces and turn those into native plant landscapes. So we've been around since 2017. I started this organization when I was a student at UC Berkeley, actually because they were spraying toxic pesticides around our beach volleyball court. I saw we had like at least one Berkeley person here, so thank you for coming. There's been so much awesome work happening at Berkeley since we've got herbicides banned from Berkeley's campus. Berkeley is now almost entirely organically managed. I think we can probably learn a lot from the Berkeley staff person who's here today, if you wanted to share as well. We got glyphosate banned from the University of California system, and we've done since then, like expanded our work nationally and have reduced pesticide usage at a lot of colleges around the country. So just for some numbers, now there's over 500,000 students protected annually from toxic pesticides. We've either, transitioned or converted areas through wilding, like almost 5,000 acres of land across the US. I'll share a little bit about our green ground certification, and we've certified 14 institutions so far, which is exciting. And we have a boot camp, and that's really geared towards students and teaching them advocacy. And we've been able to reach a lot of students and community members that way as well. So just a bit about how we work with schools. First is the certification. So if there's schools that meet our standards, we will certify them. I think Tyson from UW Bothell is here. UW Bothell is one of the schools that's certified at the platinum level, which means entirely organic. Including sports fields. We also do pilot projects. So we work with campuses. We'll bring in an expert who will analyze soil test results, and come up with an organic management plan for groundskeepers to follow. And that's usually done on like 1 to 4 sites on a campus. And then from there, the idea is that the staff learns how to do organic management and can then transition more areas on their own without needing like the assistance from the organic land care expert. And then kind of similarly, we do these rewilding projects a lot of times with students where we will find spaces on a campus that can be converted to more biodiverse native plant landscapes, all without using toxic pesticides and fertilizers. And then we work a lot with like folks, sustainability staff, grounds staff, just doing things like this where we provide education and we connect a lot of grounds folks to each other to learn from each other. I think the best way that schools can learn is to learn from schools that are, already modeling this. Like I said, we have our boot camp. I'll send a link for that in the chat, and you can send it to students if you have anyone interested. Then every week there's tons of students that are emailing us, and we work a lot one-on-one with students and try to problem solve how we can support them and how the students can work in collaboration with their grounds teams and with their sustainability staff. And then finally, we're gonna pilot an organic land care course, hopefully next year. And that will be sort of like this, but it would be kind of more intensive, a deeper dive, more of like a 6-week long course. If this is something that you might be interested in, we will send out a survey after this just to get a gauge. We want to really create the content of that like with you and for you, and something that can be really helpful. Just like going into all the questions that you may have about organic land care, and kind of finding out what you would want to get out of that. Okay, I'm gonna now hand it over to, no, one more slide and I'll hand it over to Shayna. So this is our certification. It's similar to like the LEED building certification, if you're familiar with that. We have the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Bronze is 50% of your campus is managed without synthetic pesticides. Silver is 70, gold is 90, and then platinum is 100%. These are the schools we've certified so far. It also goes into not just around pesticide usage, but really as the tiers go up, it's looking at, how are you saving water? How are you working with students? Can you commit to swapping out your gas-powered equipment for battery-powered equipment when the life cycle runs out? Just these other like land care sustainability measures. So if you have any interest in this, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end and we can send more information. And yeah, we'd love, it's really just a way to reward schools for the work that they're already doing and help institutionalize this so that if you have these practices, it's something that your school can be proud of. It's something you can promote, and then hopefully it's something that can stay that way, even as like, you might have turnover in your staff or whatnot. Okay, I will pass it over to Shayna now.
Thank you, Ken's. Yeah, so Ken's kind of covered how the organic pilot projects work, but just wanted to highlight the 5 schools that we're currently doing organic pilot projects on. And on the photo here, you can see students and staff at Oberlin out collecting soil samples that helped to inform the organic land care program. And I think Andrea and Russ will kind of get into the more technical aspects of organic land care and what it is and isn't. So I won't kind of get too into that right now. But yeah, these are schools that are working with us to kind of integrate organic land care strategies into their land care practices.
And we're also starting with Stanford in the fall, which is a new, so we hadn't made it onto this list, but that's exciting.
And then just some examples of the rewilding project. This is a rewilding project we did at Grinnell College in Iowa with some students, and the students there kind of identified this area that was previously lawn that's in the lower right hand like aerial shot, and so that was like lawn sandwiched between sidewalks surrounded by more lawn, and this was the underutilized area of turf grass that students were not recreating on. It wasn't like really used for play or for hanging out because it was surrounded by other much larger lawns that were heavily used. And so the students identified this as a good site to be rewilded, and they brought in a prairie grass expert who helped them figure out kind of right plant, right place. And they also we're able to use a sod cutter to cut up the turf grass to create the soil to plant the plants in without any herbicide use. And it's been a wild success. And now Grinnell has kind of worked on their own, not necessarily with the student support, but to increase prairie plantings on campus just because of how well the student body received the prairie plantings. And the Office of Sustainability has interns that help weed the prairie plots, and it's a great way to like bring biodiversity into the campus, as I'm sure you all know. And this is just a little map of a bunch of schools that we're working with, just so y'all can kind of get an idea of where we're working, and really with schools across the country. And I'll just say these are like schools that we're working with in a variety of capacities, like Ken's mentioned. At some of the schools we're coaching students, at some of these schools we're working with ground staff, or some of these schools are certified with our certification. Perfect.
Sorry, it's so weird the way I decided to.
And then, yeah, I just wanted to quickly highlight Drexel University because I think our work at Drexel really shows the way that our programs work together. So y'all can kind of get a better idea of how this work all ties together. But at Drexel in 2022, students began advocating for chemical reduction and got in touch with us, and we helped them figure out a strategy and get in touch with their grounds team and really be strategic about the outreach and have a series of meetings where we discussed what it would look like to pilot organic land care. And a year later, the grounds team agreed to pilot organic land care on Drexel Park, which is a public park managed by the Drexel grounds team that's used by students and the community. And they thought this was like the perfect spot because it was used a lot by people with pets and by students and by people with kids. And so like reducing chemical use here was really important for the community. And a year after the pilot started, the grounds team was so impressed with the efficacy of the organic land care program, which mostly kind of revolved around overseeding, aerating, and application of organic fertilizers, that they decided to expand the organic practices to the rest of campus. And now all of Drexel's campus is managed without synthetic inputs, and Drexel has now received the certification at the silver level. So just kind of goes to show how our work with students can lead to pilots, can lead to certification, and beyond. And I just quickly wanted to touch on kind of the problem with pesticides. And I think everyone's here because we're all excited to learn about how we can reduce chemical use. But also, I think it's important to just, spend a second talking about why this is important. In addition to causing harm to the environment. These chemicals are really pervasive in our bodies. Research has found that 90% of Americans have detectable pesticides in their bodies, and that most Americans have 29 different pesticides found in our bodies. And a lot of that is from our food system, but I think an additional aspect of that is the way that we manage our land. And I think it's awesome that so many of y'all are here today to try and learn how we can continue to reduce and eliminate these toxins. And I think, kind of as Russ and Andrea will get into, there's like so many viable alternatives when it comes to land care. And I think that's like why this is such a area that's ripe for opportunity, because there are viable alternatives that we can employ to reduce chemical inputs. And just, I know Russ and we'll get into this, but just really wanted to kind of address this at the start. I think that we see a lot of schools really concerned that going organic will mean that the campus will all of a sudden look chaotic, look unkempt, like look really weedy and look really crazy. And while I think that that is one way that a campus can go organic, there's a way to do it in which you are maintaining the same look and you are seeing cost savings and water savings and improved soil health. And I really just wanted to nail that home, because I know there's a lot of fear from folks around going organic, stopping the use of the chemical inputs, and then seeing the lawn go crazy and fill with dandelions and clovers. And that does not have to be the case. And we've worked with a lot of schools that have seen a lot of water savings, a lot of cost savings, and a lot of improvements in soil health as a result of the organic transition. Sweet. So I'll pass it to Russ to take us through some of the myths and myth busting around organic land care. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Shayna. My name is Russ Henry, and I'm the owner of Minnehaha Falls Landscaping. And we are an all organic landscaping company in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We care for a couple of campuses at elementary schools where we are doing an organic transition for the schools. And additionally, we have hundreds of residential clients where we're transitioning their lawns either to organic management or to bee lawns. I don't know if everybody here is familiar with bee lawns, but that's something that's really got caught a big buzz here in Minnesota, where folks are intentionally adding clover, self-heal, yarrow, other blooming plants into the lawn in order to eliminate mowing, eliminate pesticide use, have a drought-resistant lawn, and feed dozens of species of native bees at the same time. What we're seeing here on the screen is an image of Glen Lake Elementary School in Hopkins, Minnesota. This is just outside of Minneapolis. It's one of the suburbs here. They have 6 or 7 elementary schools in their Hopkins district. And one of the myths of pesticide use that I'd like to kind of talk about here is that that it doesn't work, and that everything has to turn into weeds and look horrible when you attempt to use pesticides, or when you attempt to go organic. The fact of the matter is that's actually can be completely flipped on its head, because as we can see in the above or before image here, this property was managed entirely by an herbicide using company using synthetic fertilizers and herbicides, and that left the field after we tested it with very little fungi at all. And the fungi in the soil is what gives the plants the ability to make it through drought. So we can see here 2 years that were really not very different for rainfall, and this field is not irrigated. But this bottom picture is 3 years into our organic transition program, and the top is how we found it after many years of chemical management. So the myth is that organic doesn't work and that you need the pesticides, but the reality is that the pesticide systems don't work long term because they destroy soil health. And so a lot of folks aren't looking at that. They're just thinking, well, as long as we're killing weeds, then we're managing properties appropriately. And that's just not true. It's really for playgrounds and ball fields, it's all about turf density. We have to have thick turf that is going to withstand a lot of foot traffic. And in order to achieve that, we must aerate and overseed. We must make sure we're using organic fertilizers and that we're growing fungi intentionally. Sometimes we use fungal foods, and we're measuring these fungi as they're growing through a laboratory that uses the methods of Dr. Elaine Ingham, Ingham, and that's who I trained under for a few years directly to learn a lot about, to learn enough about functional soil management in order to be able to deliver for our clients a soil management system, a turf management system that results in thicker turf over time and importantly reduced costs. And that brings me to another myth that going organic is going to blow the budget and go through the roof. And what we find is that there is an initial investment that is going to, in any, say municipal system, that's going to be greater. The first 2 or 3 years of initial investment are going to be greater than what they're used to spending, maybe by about 25 to 30%. However, in subsequent years after that, and basically every year after that first 2 or 3, we can bring costs down by 25% over below what they were paying previously. And so that means that in an ongoing basis, we're able to save quite a lot of money. After 3 years, the ROI is already there. We've already returned the investment, and then the cost savings begin after that 25 to 30% savings per year in campus management. That's significant for anybody who's in a school district, because I don't know about the school districts where you live, but here in Minnesota, they're always trying to reduce funding in school districts at the state level. And so they're pinching pennies everywhere they can. So if you're able to offer a reduction in not only the poisons that are going on the campus, and we can't really say enough about the toxicity of these things, especially with kids and young adults, people who are still developing their systems and their bodies. These pesticides are incredibly dangerous. But not only can we save children from being exposed to these and people from being exposed to these, but we can save money, and that should impress anybody who's managing a system, a landscape system. That's unless there's anything else you wanted me to touch on, Mackenzie or Shana, that's what I was going to say.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation, Russ. I know there was a hand up at some point. We do have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the webinar where we'll take questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to just save them for that time. But yeah, that was sort of our section on sort of myths and misconceptions about organic land management. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about what is organic land management. And now I will introduce Andrea from F2 Environmental Design, and I will start sharing my screen.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrea Philippone. I'm principal and owner of F2 Environmental Design. It's a firm that has been operating for over 15 years, and we are 100% organic and sustainable land management designers. And we have worked in a variety of different scale projects, from universities, public parks, to private residences. And this first slide is just showing you the tools that I need. And it's as basic as that. It's a shovel and a soil probe. And I think if everybody has that with them, they can approach organic land management much easier. And I'm going to emphasize that soil probe, because without that, we're just guessing what's happening in the soil. Next. So what is really important here is that we get our hands into the soil. And we're going to look at it in literally by putting the shovel in there, taking the soil probe, doing percolation tests, taking soil samples, looking at the development of the roots of the plants, be it trees, be it shrubs, be it lawn. But without this initial investigation, we have no idea what's going on. So I encourage everybody to take this step first. This is an important step in organic land management. We are process-based, not product-based. So if we have a problem, it's not that we're trying to pick some chemical off the shelf. What we're trying to do is figure out what the problem is first, to then figure out how do we deal with it. And if we are going to deal with it, we are definitely going to deal with it in an organic and sustainable way. Next. So this is the essence of everything here. Soil is life. We need to honor and respect it. I can't stress this enough. You know, nobody thinks of what's below the surface. Soil is made up of all these organisms, microorganisms, that we need to encourage and give them an environment that they will prosper in. Next. So we're going to talk about soil here a little bit. Next. Soil is made up of sand, silt, and clay. And we make our soils by components. And in the bottom left-hand side of the screen, you will see compost on the left side. In the middle, you'll see sand. And on the right, you'll see loam. And different recipes, different amounts of each will enable us to create a soil mix that we then will use on our particular jobs. Next. And when we're thinking about soil in a site, we are thinking about the existing soil, which would be the subsoil. Then we build a base component, which is for drainage, and then a lower root zone, and then an upper root zone. Next. And this is an example. On the right-hand side, you will see that base component, and then there's just a little bit of a shelf, which would be the lower root zone. And then on the top layer would be the upper root zone. And we are the reason we build it this way is because the base component is the area that's giving us our best drainage. And then that has the least amount of organic matter in it. And then the lower root zone has a little bit more organic matter in it and a little bit of loam. And then the upper root zone has the most amount of organic matter in it. And that base component, that sand level, goes through all three layers. And what we're trying to do is encourage whatever we're growing, trees or shrubs or lawn, to build a deep and strong root system, and one that can take up all the micronutrients that the soil is offering. Next. So in the soil, what we are trying to do is encourage the soil biology. And we are also trying to have a diverse biology. Next. So here is fungi breaking down the surface of a leaf. So by having a diversity of fungi in the soil, we have a greater defense for the roots and decomposition. Next. Nematodes. We also want nematodes, and this is a beneficial nematode, the one that will help break up the soil for us. Next. This is an orifice of the nematode. So the closer and closer you get in, you start to see what this life looks like. And it is diverse. And I'm just showing you a few images of these protozoans and nematodes and fungi so that you can understand what is going on underneath the surface. It's almost as if you were a scuba diver and you were able to get into the water and start to see what's actually living in there. but you can't. So we have to do it via images from the microscope. Next. And then this is another type of fungi that lures in detrimental nematodes and then feeds on them. Next. And then this is a ciliate. A ciliate's beneficial in the soil because it can turn around an anaerobic soil into an aerobic soil. So again, going back to having the diversities of protozoans, amoebas, ciliates, and flagellates. Next. So one of the projects that we have worked on is Harvard. We've also worked at Princeton. And in all of these jobs, we are looking at the situation scientifically. We are putting our shovel in the soil. We are putting our soil probe in the soil. We are taking soil samples. We are then sending out those soil samples for chemical, textural, and biological results. And from that, and adding the existing conditions and what the client wants to do with the site, we are able to come up with a program that best meets their needs and existing conditions. And again, we're doing it by looking at the soil underneath the microscope and examining the root structure of the trees, the shrubs, and the lawn. Next. So here's another example. Brooklyn Bridge Park getting an inordinate amount of foot traffic. Next. So we were looking at the turf conditions. Heavy thatch, very little root growth in the turf. And as Russ was talking about earlier, by doing aeration, in our case, we were also adding compost teas, we were overseeding, we were having a diverse fescues that we were using. Next. So the control is on the left and our approach is on the right. And so you can start to see the depth of the roots on the right side getting deeper and deeper. And so obviously the deeper the roots you have, the stronger that lawn's going to be. And it's also going to retain more water, which means that you are going to have to use less water to maintain this green lawn. Next. And this is what we want. We want to see roots at 21 inches at least, and or 28 inches. And that is what we are able to get from this approach, this scientific approach of managing the landscape. Next. So what we look at is a closed loop system. We are looking at, in this particular case, a tree and how it loses its leaves, how the leaves drop, the bacteria and the fungi decompose it, the protozoans feed on it, and so do the beneficial nematodes and the fungi. And then with that fungi, the plant, the root system is able to take up those nutrients so that it can produce the leaves, and then the leaves, with photosynthesis, can provide the food for the tree, creating this closed loop system. Next. So for us, this closed loop system includes keeping everything on site, the brush, the cuttings, the leaves, we mulch it, and then we put it back. Leave the leaves is one thing that a lot of people say, because those leaves that are coming off of an oak tree are going to also be nourishing that oak tree once they decompose underneath that tree. And what a lot of people are doing is taking that away. Next. So here's some recipes of building compost and what we want to add as a component in making our soils. We can either have a bacterial mix or we can have a fungal mix. And the difference is the proportions of the different components that we add to it. Next. And then these are some of the foods that we add. In the bottom left-hand corner is compost, which we then activate. What we're trying to do is, before we start brewing our compost tea, we will mix in molasses and oats to grow more fungi. We'll keep it mixed in a trug, and then we keep a moist piece of burlap on top of it. And then after about a week or two, we will then use that mixture in making our compost tea. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the foods that we put into the compost tea brewer. And at the bottom, you'll see 3 brewers. And the goal here is we take the compost and put it in these big bags. And it's hung in the brewer with 250 gallons of water and proportions of these foods. And then there's an air blower, because these microorganisms that we are growing need oxygen. And what we're doing with the foods in the water is we're coaxing those microorganisms off the compost and into the water. And the reason we use the compost tea versus just applying compost is because it's an easy method for us to apply to a site. We can drench a tree. We can apply it across the whole lawn. We can apply it underneath shrubs. So it's an easy way for us to get those microorganisms into the soil. Next. We don't have to be, everybody doesn't have to have a 250-gallon brewer like we have. I also make these smaller brewers that are made out of 55-gallon drum brute trash containers, which we then can bring to a job site or to a rooftop, whatever. And when we're brewing this, it could be 2 days, it could be 3 days, it could be 4 days. Every single day, we are looking at samples under the microscope to look at that ratio between bacteria and the protozoans. Initially, when we start the brew, we will have a lot of bacteria. And once the bacteria are eaten by the protozoans, we know that is the time to make that application into the landscape. Next. So again, our goal is to teach as many people as possible about this approach, about looking at the soil, about trying to see what actually is going on. What is more important is that you are observant, that you take the time to put that soil probe in the ground or the shovel, get your hands in there and start to look, see what's going on. And if you have that ability to either take a class in soil biology, we offer those classes also, then you will start to have a better understanding. You will start to respect the soil more, which goes back to my first slide. What we have to understand is the soil is a living entity and that we need to respect and honor it. Next. And this is my last slide in closing, is that we have to work with nature. We have to work together and we have to respect one another. There is so much for us to learn from Mother Nature. And I think if we take the time and look around and see how Mother Nature works, we will be able to work side by side with one another. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was a very amazing presentation, very detailed, and lots of great images. And now we'll be transitioning to the Q&A portion of our webinar. So if anyone wants to raise their hand, you can also drop the question in the chat and I'll read them out. Yes, Blake, go ahead.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks so much for today and for the call. And for Wilding, I'm glad you're down in the great city of Austin. It's pretty close, relatively, as far as Texas goes. Insofar as stormwater planning and management and how that integrates into the soil and the behaviors of the soils in response to flooding events, how do how do you recommend, or how are you seeing some schools approach the that interrelated issue of the soil quality and flooding, just generally, from either?
Can I chime in for a sec? The one thing I talked about initially is drainage, which is a key element in the soil or on any site that you're working with. So again, observing what are the existing conditions. If you have poor drainage, then you're going to have an issue with dealing with the water. So if you can work on improving the drainage, either through a drainage system, by the type of soil that you're using. But again, some of those last images I showed you about the lawn, if you have a really good deep root system, that is going to hold that water and it's not going to sheet off. So
Right.
those are elements that you have to keep in mind in order to try and deal with the water issues on that campus. If that's the situation you have, swales obviously are big things that can be used to direct water into different areas. But again, if you can work with the soil and try and make it have good drainage and good root system, you have achieved a lot.
Thank you.
I'd add that if I remember correctly, according to the USDA, every 1% increase in organic matter in soils leads to 20,000 gallons more water held per acre in a rain event. So you can see now when we're testing soils on a typical ball field, we'll find maybe 3, maybe 4% organic matter. If we're lucky, sometimes it's quite a bit lower. We can aim to get that to 8, 10, 12%. And you can see that when we do that, we're increasing, given that statistic, we're increasing water holding capacity considerably just with the soils. As was previously mentioned, also, rain gardens, swales, and other systems for capturing rainwater physically and holding it as it drains into the soil are key. As a landscaper, we're always looking at, how basically for every landscape design, how will water interact with this space first and foremost. That's one of the major considerations.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, we've just identified an area that it has a little bit of a dearth of city supported infrastructure of stormwater. And then, you look at the capital planning and it's more so about the directionality and flows and having less than 1% organic matter across the board is a challenge, but something to work towards. Thank you all.
Awesome. Next is Jason.
Hi, I had a question for Russ. Those two pictures were fantastic. I was curious, what else do you do on that ball field? Is there aerating to break up compaction if there's heavy usage? And I was just curious what some of the other practices that go into that.
Thanks, Jason. I think the practices we're using there are really very similar to everything that we saw in the presentation. We're aerating. To get it there, we aerated 3 times per year: spring, late summer, early fall. Each aeration comes with a seed application. We're using a drought-resistant, locally sourced turf seed blend with fescue, Kentucky blue, and perennial rye, and that's suitable for Minnesota. We are adding organic fertilizer, liquid compost extract. We do something very similar to compost tea, but it skips the brewing step. We're just extracting the microbes and into water, putting them directly on the fields with some of those fungal foods that were mentioned as well. So aerating and basically we're looking at the soil as after we've tested to find out what compaction we're at, We've got biological and mechanical means of breaking through that compaction. The mechanical is the aerator. If you can, in our sites, we're often in the city, so we can't get the deep tine aerator. We're using usually a core aerator, and we can still get good results, especially when combined with seeding and fertilizer. Does that help answer the question?
It does. It does. I appreciate that. It was a great great turnaround on those two images. So I was curious what else you did. It was impressive.
Thank you.
All right, and now next up is another Jason, Sowerwine. Go ahead.
At our campus, where we predominantly use pesticides or synthetic fertilizers is our lawns. And in terms of herbicides, predominantly it goes towards what we would call crack weeds or like weeds in hardscaping. We are experimenting a bit with solarization for areas that we are trying to renovate. And I'm just kind of curious what suggestions or perspectives do you have on controlling weeds in hardscaped areas, and tips or strategies with processes like solarization?
Well, I can jump in here for Minneapolis Public Schools. We help them eliminate the use of Roundup for all the hard surface weeds and for the fence line weeds. So it's kind of two different areas because fence lines are often in grass, but still you don't want anything growing on that fence line. So for the hard surface weeds, we switch them over to vinegar, and the vinegar solution is it's just white vinegar with a little bit of Dawn dish soap and some table salt. I think the most troubling ingredient in there is the table salt for long-term for soils. So we don't ever apply that to soils. That mixture is only for, cracks up against the building and in rocky, rocked areas, landscape rocked areas. Along the fence lines, we found that switching over to a steam machine, the school district already had a graffiti remover, and they just called the company that made it and asked them if they had another attachment that would maybe help them probe the soil a little bit or get the steam into the soil a little bit. And now they use that along all the fence lines. This is for a public school system that, according to Minnesota state law, had to send out a disclosure form to all of the parents in the district every fall to let everybody know, hey, we're going to be using pesticides at the schools. That caused a avalanche every year of negative comments and feedback to the school district. Once they were able to eliminate this, plus we helped them transition their indoor pesticide use to all botanicals, so they're no longer using any insecticides inside. They could eliminate now sending out that form to every parent and freaking every parent in the district out, because now they're 100% organic inside and out. The only place they're not is on the ball fields, and they've got some pilots there. But anyway, there is a solution for the hardscapes and the fence lines. The vinegar is great. They first tried it at their facilities office where all the managers hang out and park every day, and it killed everything dead in the parking lot there. So then they implemented it throughout the district and no longer have to purchase Roundup.
I'm curious about, I have the same perspective about using that only on hardscapes and not in the soil, regards to the soap and the salt. I've always been a little curious about what the runoff of that from hardscape, how that might be affecting other things. Do you have any follow-ups on that?
I do not have a good answer to that question. I'm going to make an assumption that 100% of the salt that is in the mixture gets then into the water. And so we don't want to overuse it, obviously. And I want to also put that in the perspective of the fact that every herbicide contains salts of different sort. So regardless of what you're using, whether it's some salt that's from Bayer, Monsanto, or from Morton, you're going to be using some salt to kill weeds. I tend to aim towards the salts that are digestible. knowing that they are damaging to waters, and so we don't overuse them. We spray directly on the foliage with a light sprayer, not a heavy spray, and that helps, I think, reduce. And I'd love to hear what Andrea has to say about that too.
I typically just use the vinegar with some Dawn soap. So I don't put any salt in it. I mean, I've seen other people say baking soda or something like that in it too, but I've never used it. The vinegar works perfectly fine on a sunny day, on a very sunny day. So you can't do it when it's overcast. And I would stay away from the salt. We don't need it.
All right, now we're gonna have Isadora.
Yeah, hi. I'm a student, so this is more a question for the Rewild staff. So I was beginning the process of trying to get UC Irvine certification, and in terms of, I guess, moving up a level in the certification, is there a process, or would the staff be able to um, sort of guide me on, because our campus is we have a facilities management, but there's also a lot of other entities that control other landscaping areas. So just besides for facilities management, having those other entities that might not be directly affiliated with the campus, having them transition.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a bit technical, but I think it's so awesome to have students here and like even just to understand a bit about the actual implementation of organic is so important. So it's great that you're here. So your question is for UC Irvine how to move up a level. I just to clarify though, but you are not currently certified though. So is the question more like how to get certified, or once you get certified, how to move up?
I think once we get certified, how to move up, because I'm in the middle of like gathering all the information, but we would most likely be at a bronze, but then after that, yeah, like how to move up um by getting the other entities to go organic.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sounds good. You're probably working with Shayna on that then. Shayna, do you want to answer that oops, I think I've accidentally pinned you, Jason, my bad. If you've been working with Shayna, maybe I'll let her answer that.
Yeah, we actually haven't met Isadora, but it's great to meet you. And I've definitely done some work with Matt and some of the other UC Irvine staff. But yeah, I think once a school is part of the certification, like we can do a series of meetings to try and like identify areas for improvement. And like I know that at a lot of schools there can be like a lack of maybe centralization when it comes to grounds management, and like one department will manage central campus organically, but housing and dining does their own thing and athletics does their own thing, and trying to kind of figure out where the best place to start is in terms of chemical reduction. And then yeah, I think we can like figure out like the best path forward. Like for example, the organic pilot projects can be a good way to learn how to manage the large lawns and landscapes organically. But like Jason just kind of asked, sometimes the chemical use is in the sidewalk cracks. So you don't necessarily need a whole organic pilot project to learn how to manage the sidewalk cracks organically. We can like, pick the brains of some of our experts like Russ and Andrea for viable alternatives. So I think like I would say to answer your question, like kind of I suggest filling out the application for where you guys are at, and then we can kind of sit down with you all and identify kind of where the majority of the chemical use is going. And then from there can kind of figure out, okay, is the majority of the chemical use on the lawns? Then we need to kind of figure out how to educate your grounds team in organic land care and maybe get them to come to some of these next few meetings and maybe meet with some of our experts and figure out some of the technical stuff. Or is it more in the landscape beds and the sidewalk cracks? And what are the kind of solutions for those different landscapes? I know that's kind of like a non-answer, but I hope that gave you a bit of an idea, and happy to chat. Yeah, outside of this
No,
too.
yeah, and I work directly under Matt, so we'll probably be in touch.
Awesome.
All right, and I think I saw Jason, you raised your hand.
Sorry, I couldn't find the button. I just had a thought. So my position is interesting, whereas I maintain grounds, but then I also sometimes have to do in-room pest control for some of the areas on campus. And I'm wondering, like, would our use of pesticides in buildings, like, take away from any potential status that we would have in terms of like our exterior grounds maintenance? Where am I going with this? Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Yes, I can get what you're saying. Like, for example, if you're putting down like ant traps inside, does that impact certification status or chemical use? Yeah, so we're mostly focused on like the grounds and not the interiors of buildings. But we do have some questions like in the certification application about rodenticide use, just to kind of like try and assess where schools are at and kind of find opportunities for improvement and best practice implementation. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, a lot of great questions and a lot of interesting discussion. We are at the end of about over with our hour. So I wanted to first thank the speakers, Russ Henry, Andrea, and Shayna and Mackenzie. Really great presentations today. And even though we are done with the webinar today, we do have a webinar series. This is the first webinar of that series. Our second webinar will be on August 27th. From 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern, and we will have speakers talk about specific case studies. So you saw today, we highlighted Harvard and Princeton. We'll go more in depth to those programs and some schools that have gone through the certification process like Harvard. So we highly encourage you guys to join us then as well. And I'm going to drop in the chat the contact information of all of our speakers today. So if you want to reach out, continue conversations, ask about certification, or want to get your school more involved, that's a great way to do it. But yeah, other than that, thank you all for attending today's webinar. And yeah, if anyone has any final comments, feel free to share.
Thank you all, and we'll follow up in an email. But I just wanted to say I dropped in just this form if you want to fill it out, to give us a better sense of what you're looking for when it comes to future content, as we develop, like I said, a longer term course. Thank you, Kiana, and we'll also provide more resources in a follow-up email as well. I know there's a lot of you here who manage your campuses organically, and you guys can definitely be a resource for each other. So we'll send a link for like an ecological forum that we've created so everyone can stay in touch with each other through ASHE.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.